Hey, fourth grade, it's Mrs. DeHaven here again from Parkside, and I'm going to share with you your reading lesson for today. Just like last week, we are continuing with the same standards that we worked with, mainly focusing on citing evidence from two texts and really kind of combining the information from multiple texts that we read on the same topic. Today's topic is Neil Armstrong. So what we're going to do is, if you don't know who Neil Armstrong is, we are going to find that out together today by reading a Time for Kids article. And I'm going to read it out loud to you, and you'll see it on my screen in a few seconds here. But while we're reading, feel free to take notes. If you want to hit pause and grab some paper to jot some things down, you're welcome to do so. That's not required. You don't need to turn it in. But I want you to think about how Neil Armstrong stepped into history in the space world with what we are about to read about. So that's kind of like your focus for reading right now. So I will post the link to the article in the main page so that if you want to go back and reread it yourself, you're welcome to do so. But like I said, this is a Time for Kids article, and it is called Stepping into History. It was written on May 3rd, 2019, and it was written by Shay Mons, and that's up at the top here. This article is jam-packed with photographs from NASA, which is really cool. So all the pictures that you're going to see are actually from NASA. They published it for this article. As we walk through the article, you're going to see some italics words. We have our photographs, our captions, which we'll get to. These words that are highlighted in yellow are main vocabulary words. So just like if you were reading a article or something on paper, there might be some bolded words that you could then go into the glossary for. These words digitally we're able to click on. So if I didn't know what the word finale means, I could click on it and it would tell me that it's the end of something or the climax. Same thing for milestones here. A milestone is an important event. As we keep scrolling down, you'll see more photographs. The word lunar is here. If you don't know what the word lunar means, again, we could click on it. That tells me that it means that it's relating to the moon, and you're going to see a picture here of one of our astronauts that we're going to talk about today, which is Neil Armstrong. Some more photographs. I see headings, which are going to tell me what each section is about, which is a great thing to pay attention to as you're reading and to organize your information. And last, some more photographs. So again, I'll link this article to the main page, but right now we're going to read it together. As we're reading, I might stop and pose some questions to you. I know that you can't have a conversation back and forth with me like we are in class, but feel free to pause this at any point and stop to think about what we are reading. So here is Stepping into History. On July 20th, 1969, more than 500 million people around the world watched a special event on live TV. They saw grainy black and white images beamed back from space. Then they heard the voice of American astronaut Neil Armstrong. He said, "That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." And I want you to remember that quote because you're going to see it at the end of our lesson. You're going to have to think about what that actually means. What did Neil Armstrong mean when he said that? So here's our first photograph. This is an actual photograph from NASA, and it is Buzz Aldrin's boot making an imprint on lunar soil. So that would be the moon's soil, which is pretty cool. You can see his footprint there. Armstrong had just become the first person to walk on the moon. His famous footsteps were the finale of a fierce competition. In the 1950s and 1960s, the United States and the Soviet Union raced to achieve milestones in space exploration. 8 years earlier, U.S. President John F. Kennedy challenged the nation to send a person to the moon. NASA accepted. To the moon. Here's another photograph called Far From Home, and it is Apollo 11's lunar module Eagle, which is returning from the moon's surface. So there you'll see the moon and Earth in the background. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins formed the Apollo 11 crew. They were launched into space on July 16, 1969. As they neared the moon, the team split up. Collins was in Columbia. This was Apollo 11's command module. Armstrong and Aldrin traveled in Eagle. This was the lunar module. As Collins orbited, Armstrong steered Eagle to a fairly flat area that NASA had named the Sea of Tranquility. When they touched down, he notified Mission Control in Houston, Texas. The Eagle has landed. Maybe you've heard that quote before. Armstrong and Aldrin spent 21 hours and 36 minutes on the moon. It's almost a full day. They set up science experiments and took rock and soil samples. They also planted an American flag in the powdery ground and left a plaque. It says, "We came in peace for all mankind." Here's another NASA photograph. It is that they are the moon men. Here's Neil Armstrong on the left. In the middle, we have Michael Collins, and on the right, there is Buzz Aldrin. The men returned to Earth on July 24th, 1969, splashing down safely in the Pacific Ocean. The mission was a success. Past, present, and future. Collins spoke to Time for Kids about the historic mission. He described seeing Earth from a distance. The Earth, from 230,000 miles, is a tiny, bright, shiny object, he says. As you look at it, you have this strong attraction to it because you know it is your home. Everything you've known all your life is right there in a tiny dot. You can blot it out with your thumbnail if you stick it out in front of you, meaning if you stick your thumb straight out in front of you and you kind of close one eye, he could actually put his thumb over Earth. That's how far away they were, which really kind of puts things into perspective. If you look around the room that you're in right now and put your thumb out and try to cover things up. Here's another picture, this one photograph. Buzz Aldrin stands on the moon near the American flag that he and Neil Armstrong planted. So that's a pretty powerful picture there with the American flag that they were able to plant on the moon. U.S. astronauts last visited the moon in 1972. That was a long time ago. President Donald Trump has challenged NASA to send the next man and the first woman there by 2024. Guys, it's 2020. That's pretty soon. So hopefully NASA is able to do that and you all will get to experience it, which would be really neat. The plan is to visit the moon's south pole. This mission could help NASA send people to another faraway place, Mars. Sidebar, celebrating a milestone. The Apollo astronauts returned to Earth as heroes. They went on a goodwill tour. It celebrated their achievement, and it showed that the U.S. would share its space knowledge. They traveled around the U.S. and to 24 countries. Below, they're shown standing in a car in a parade in New York City. And there's that photograph for you. Celebrations continue this summer. July 2019 marks the mission's 50th anniversary. Events are planned at museums and other locations across the country. The Kennedy Space Center in Florida expects a record number of visitors. So remember that this article was written last year in 2019, which would have been the celebration, the 50th anniversary of walking on the moon. So I'm going to go back to my presentation here. So who was Neil Armstrong? What did you find out about him? Why or how did he step into history in the space world? What did he do? How did he change things? So all some really important questions for you to think about. That was an informational piece about Neil Armstrong. So what are you going to do next? Remember, that was just one piece of information, one source that we looked at together. It's your turn to look at another source. So here's what you are going to do. You're going to go into Epic. You are going to go into Epic. Here we go. And at the top, you're going to type in Neil Armstrong. There are 9 books that you are able to choose from. I want you to choose any of those books on Neil Armstrong that match your level, that are interesting looking to you. You're going to read that story. And then you are going to respond to this quote that I have here. This quote can be found in the Google form, so don't feel like you have to write this down. I'll also put it there for you. But it says, what did Neil Armstrong mean when he said, that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind? And I want you to use the article that we just read together, as well as the story that you're about to read in Epic, to come up with a short response, short paragraph about that quote. What did that quote mean? How did Neil Armstrong make such an impact on the space world? I will post the article that we just read together, as well as the link to Epic, as well as the Google form back in the main page. I hope you guys have fun reading about Neil Armstrong, and I will see you next time.